Okay, but now we're recording, and it looks like most of you are here. So I think Josh had some. Yeah, I agree, Xavier. Zoom is working pretty good. So I think maybe in the future we'll try that, but for this week we'll stick with Hangout. So hi guys, again, welcome. Thanks for being here. We're gonna do chapter 7 today, and again, this will take about 20 minutes to go through here. If you can get your chapter 7 learning targets out, that'd be great. But I also have them to screen share with you, which I'll do shortly. I don't want to have a debate about grades, but just in case you didn't hear, grades are going to be pass fail this semester. For most of you guys, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know if you're still getting a grade bump. I'm going to email Mr. Brewer and also the assistant superintendent of instruction and see what they have got to say. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just a messenger. I wish I had more information, but please just be aware that it's going to be pass fail for the semester. Obviously you guys are all going to be passing. So I'm just focusing on, getting you guys ready for the AP test, which is in exactly 1 month. So yeah, Annabelle, I know there's some weird different policy. The whole thing is just wonky, and I'm just trying not to be difficult and get into it with them, but I don't know. I don't know what to say. So I will ask though, guys, if the grade bump for AP classes still happen. I think that's what most of us are most concerned about. And so I don't have the answer, but I promise today I'm going to email both Mr. Brewer and the district and ask if the grade bump will still stand for the AP classes, because I think that's the most important information for us. So that's what I've got for you right now. Other than that, guys, the AP test, remember, is May 15th. We've got exactly 1 month for it. You don't have an option on the day you take it. You have to take it on May 15th at 11 a.m. And it's one short DBQ. They're going to give you 5 sources. And, if you can use 4 of them, you can get full credit. So we'll do lots of practice with writing thesis statements, and we'll do lots of document practice and basic practice of DBQ related stuff over the next month. But that's what we're working towards. I really wish it was 3 short answer questions, but it is what it is. So I'm really confident you guys will be able to knock it out of the park. So I'm going to go ahead and start screen sharing with you and show you my chapter 7 learning targets for those of you that don't have it. Chat. Okay. Give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Okay. Sorry, I thought I had a little technical glitch. Can you guys see my screen? Can someone verbally?
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Sorry, I don't know what was going on my end, but it looks good. Okay, cool. So I can go ahead and get started then, guys. We got chapter 7 learning targets. And again, we've already adopted the Constitution. Now we're really going to determine how much authority the federal government's going to have in this new country. Some of you guys are still writing the colonists, and we're not the colonists at this point. We are the American citizens. Obviously, African Americans don't fit into that category quite yet. Women, although citizens, won't enjoy all the rights of citizenship, but that's really detailed, and I don't need to go into that right now. Look at the vocabulary. You guys will see that the main characters are, again, going to primarily be Federalists. That will be Hamilton and men like John Adams, and also Jeffersonian Republicans. This is going to be that big crisis between France and Great Britain. This is our first foreign policy crisis. You know what, guys? Didn't we do chapter 7 already? Am I having deja vu and we already did chapter 7?
Actually, I think we
yeah, aren't we on the second party system at this point?
I remember we talked about
we did, yeah.
We did. Okay, sorry for that.
Yeah,
we talked about the Marshall Court.
Yeah, we did. Sorry, I just goofed. I'm just off a day. I'm going to pull up chapter 8. So we talked about Hamilton's plan. I'll recap that for 60 seconds, guys. Remember, we are going to be a nation based on debt, credit, and lending. We're not going to necessarily be that nation of farmers like Jefferson wants us to. We're going to adopt Hamilton's plan. We're going to take on debt so we appear credit worthy. We talked about what the French Revolution means for us. Remember that first party system, the bitter divide on who we're going to support in that. Again, I'm not trying to do a whole recap of 7. I'm just reminding you what we already talked about. We talked about Hamilton's plan. We talked about the French Revolution's impact on us. It's our first foreign policy crisis. If you want the details on that, you check the last video. So now we're on 8. And okay, guys, this is a little bit easier of a chapter because it's so simple. We're just going to talk, guys, really briefly about the market revolution. We'll talk a little bit about Republican motherhood, and then we'll talk about the Second Great Awakening. I shouldn't say it's that simple. It's actually bigger than I thought, but now I'm on the right track. Look at our vocabulary, guys. some of these people that are going to fit in, you don't necessarily have to remember. Lyman Beecher is going to fit into the Second Great Awakening. But cool. Look at the vocabulary. And let's just go through our learning targets, guys. I'll start with Republican motherhood. I have seen entire DBQs based on the changing role of women in the United States. So, guys, you're never going to get a DBQ, and we can just remember, focus on the DBQ now, because that's what we're going to see in a month. You will never see a DBQ on Republican motherhood, but you will absolutely possibly see a DBQ that asks you about the changing role of women in American society. So you've got to understand the traditional gender roles that British North American colonists have before the American Revolution, and what women's new role in this new country and new society is going to be after the American Revolution and after our constitution's passed. So remember how ladies participate in the revolution, folks. They do participate. They participate actively in boycotts. Remember, guys, women even today, oftentimes, I mean, stuff doesn't change for this. Women oftentimes control what comes into the household in terms of food. If we want to boycott British and clothing and such, if we want to boycott British products and hurt them financially, women are really going to have to be on board with that boycott. And women are going to be really instrumental at ensuring that their households aren't consuming British tea and aren't essentially buying British goods. And so please be aware that women will participate in the American Revolution. It's normally through leading boycotts. It's also through things like the homespun movement, making your own clothes, because that's illegal at the time. So be aware that when women participate in the American Revolution, they're demonstrating what the patriots will then later, go on to call patriotic virtue. And after the American Revolution, guys, the new American government kind of has this idea. I shouldn't say the government, guys, because Republican motherhood is not a government policy. Let me say that again. Republican motherhood is not a government policy. So it's not an idea that the government has, but it's an idea that just developed socially in our country. And this is Republican motherhood. Women are important, but they have a very important place. It's just not outside of the home, guys. You are important, ladies. You need to be educated. You need to read and write. But that's so you can create a great home life to raise your children in. You need to educate your children in civics. You need to educate them in history. You need to teach them about what our founding principles are. You should be educating your children about what their natural God-given rights are. You should be telling your children about the European Enlightenment. Women, you need to have basic education. That doesn't mean we want you voting. Certainly doesn't mean that we want you owning property. And it certainly doesn't mean that you're going to have all the rights of other American citizens that are males. But be aware, women, that we want to reward you after your loyal participation during the American Revolution. And so this concept of Republican motherhood becomes a legitimate thing, folks. And again, it's simply saying that women, you have a newfound sense of social importance. You still have your domestic sphere of influence, which is the home, and you need to stay in the home. But let me tell you, ladies, it's because of you that we have strong family values. It's because of you that our sons and daughters are brought up with the proper, American values of freedom and civic equality that we so cherish. Is some of it maybe a little BS? Yeah, maybe you could argue. But guys, this does actually represent a step forward in the evolution of women's changing role in American society. We could probably say a little bit more on it, but that's the first step. You've got to be aware that it doesn't look like equality because it's not equality, but it is absolutely a step forward. It's recognition of women's importance, and it will relate and result in an increased amount of women receiving elementary education. This doesn't mean women are going to college and being doctors in the 1790s all of a sudden, folks, but this is going to be really the moment where we're going to say, you know what? All of these girls deserve basic elementary education. If we want to have a home life that is stable, where our children know where we came from, where they know what we're all about, we need our women to have that. That's what I want you to think about when you see Republican motherhood, guys. And it represents a positive stepping stone in the evolution and the changing role of women. I don't need to say anything else about about Republican motherhood. That's really the only vocab term that goes with that. So I'll move on from that in case anyone has, or unless anyone has a question on it. Feel free to speak up if Republican motherhood's not making sense, but you'll never get an essay fully on it. It will be a stepping stone to the changing role of women. Guys, so you might be talking about how did we go from the Daughters of Liberty to Rosie the Riveter in the 1940s. That might be your DBQ. It's not going to be just on Republican motherhood. It'll be on the massive changing role of women. Cool. Let's go down to another important one, the market revolution. You guys have got to remember what the market revolution is. What is a market? It's somewhere where you sell something. If I don't have access to markets, doesn't matter how much of a product I have. Doesn't matter if I can't sell it anywhere. And so be aware, folks, that during the late 1790s and early 1800s, the United States is going to go through what we call the market revolution. And what this is, folks, is really going to transform the interconnections between different regions of the country and who can sell what where. This market revolution, folks, will allow a farmer in Illinois to sell his product all the way in New York, possibly even in Europe. The market revolution, guys, is based not only on new technology. This is where you're going to see things like the cotton gin come out. You'll see new textile machines like the spinning jenny. I don't even know what the heck the spinning jenny does. I just know it helps women make you can spin multiple looms of yarn at once. And it will revolutionize textile manufacturing. It'll basically allow you to mass produce clothing. We're going to start having steam engines during the market revolution, guys. We'll develop interchangeable parts. We've had plows for a long time, but we're starting to get high quality steel farming implements in the 1800s. And this is going to greatly increase our output. Guys, these machines allow us to produce more, but it doesn't matter if we can't move all this stuff to sell it somewhere. And this is where the infrastructure projects come in. This is where early railroads are going to come in. This is where early roads are coming in. And this is where canals. I really want you to think canals, folks. The number one example you need to know for the market revolution is probably going to be the Erie Canal. That is, again, a highway, folks. It's really hard to move stuff over land. Roads get muddy. It's slow going. You got to use horses and cattle, wooden wagons. It's just a pain in the butt to move stuff over land. If you have any ability to move stuff on water, that's what you want to do. And canals are the main piece of internal infrastructure that will facilitate these open markets, guys. Again, it's about expanding the range you can sell your stuff. And since we're talking about internal improvements, remember, the Jeffersonians, they do not believe that those are constitutional. They are opposed to federally funded internal improvements, guys. They don't believe the federal government's job is to create canals in an individual state, for example. They would say if you want internal improvements, that local governments need to do that. And that debate will show continuity. You have to understand what Federalists like John Adams think about internal improvements and what Republicans like Jefferson or later down the road, Andrew Jackson. Remember, the Jacksonian Democrats are going to be a lot like the Jeffersonian Republicans. The Jacksonians won't agree with internal improvements either. Henry Clay and Andrew Jackson will fight about this in a few more chapters. So be aware of what the market revolution is, guys. New technology is allowing us to produce way more stuff. It doesn't matter whether it's food or manufactured stuff. We're producing way more now. But that only matters if we have a new place to sell it. And the internal improvements, the infrastructure, the roads, the canals, now we have a place to sell this stuff. Farmer outside of Chicago can now sell his stuff in Europe, guys. I'm going to put my product on the Great Lakes. I'll sail all the Great Lakes all the way to New York City. In fact, I'll show you an image real quick just to break up the monotony. Erie Canal. I'm almost done with this one. Let's do Erie Canal map. This is the one I like. Now, all of a sudden, folks, I can sail from Chicago through the Great Lakes, move across this man-made canal all the way across the state of New York, drop it on the Hudson River, and I'm selling my product nationwide. I think it's better to see it on Google Maps or Google Earth. But you can see where I am in Utah. Again, guys, now people in the American heartland. I'm so visual. I need to see this stuff visually, guys. I'm talking about people in Missouri, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. These people, folks, now these are the ones who have their markets expanded. Think about globalization in 2020. This is not globalization, but it's the same kind of concept. Integrated supply chain, expanded markets. Think about the heartland now being able to sell their products around the nation. Think about manufacturers in the East being able to sell their manufactured goods all over the nation as well. I don't know how good my explanation for that was just now. I feel like I kind of stumbled over a few words, but that's my market revolution, guys. That will result also in demographic transition. That's about migration. Actually, I don't want to touch on that just now. Don't worry about that phrase, guys. Demographic transition is related to market revolution. Demographic transition just means that the age, the race, and the ethnicity or the religious makeup of the country is starting to change. That's kind of related to the market revolution, but not so much. Just be aware, guys, that we have a lot of immigration continuing to come in from Western Europe. We're not just going to be British. We're going to continue getting a large Scotch-Irish population, Irish in general. We'll have a large French population move in, Germans. That's what that is about right there. It's just a vocab word. I don't see it coming up, but I just defined it for you. Cool. We'll just do about 10 or 15 more minutes. I think I'll be able to get through these. Any questions, guys, on market revolution? How are we doing? All right. So we're good on market revolution. This third learning target, guys, we can go through really quickly. I can analyze the state of slavery in America from 1790 to 1820. 1820 is a super important year, guys, because that's the year of the Missouri crisis. If you're talking about the sectional crisis or the spread of slavery, you've got to talk about the Missouri Compromise. So I'll touch on that in just a moment, but we're talking about the spread of slavery. Guys, the market revolution is a major cause of the spread of slavery. You don't have the spread of slavery without the profitability of cotton. Remember, Eli Whitney makes that cotton gin, and all of a sudden, that type of agriculture is extremely profitable. This is where you're going to see states like Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi come into the Union, guys. The deep South is the cotton growing region. Places like Virginia and the Carolinas, that's not where we're growing cotton. But after Eli Whitney creates the cotton gin in the 1790s, it makes that type of agriculture so profitable. That's when we're going to move south and west into the deep South and create those states, guys. That's the cotton belt. We'll talk Indian removal next week, but remember, we're going to remove the Indians from there first. State of slavery. Why is slavery expanding? I would say it's expanding because of the demand for cotton, spurred by the market revolution. Understand, guys, that Northerners are just as tied up in this as Southerners. Northerners don't live in a slave society, but the demand for the cotton from Northerners is part in turn of what drives slavery. Same with Europe, guys. Europe is demanding this cotton. It's driving the growth of slavery. We will outlaw the international slave trade in 1808. But we're still going to have slavery increasing through natural population, guys. We're going to stop importing them from Africa in 1808, but it doesn't mean the population is going to shrink. So I'm just trying to help you understand why slavery is expanding. That is a very, very possible DBQ prompt. I can't tell you how many times I've seen them ask about the growth of slavery, guys. Why do we initially bring them? Well, work our cash crop farms in Virginia and the Carolinas, also rice. It's not just tobacco, it's rice as well. And then it's going to spread from there, guys. I would initially go, if I'm just doing that learning target, I would start talking about our cash crop farms, and I would go to the market revolution, the demand for tobacco. I would mention Eli Whitney's cotton gin. And then where I'm hopefully going to lead you guys is the sectional crisis. Because as we spread west and as slavery expands, that's going to be the main fight in this nation. Will slavery expand west with American settlement? As we acquire new territory out west, whether it's from Indians or whether it's from Mexico or what have you, will we bring slavery with us? So guys, this brings us to the next learning target, which is the Missouri Compromise. Got to pull up the map because you have to know this one. I don't know what the DBQ prompt will be, but I love sectional crisis. Sectional crisis. It's what we're talking about right now. I'm pulling up the map. I'm just killing time while I pull up the map right here. This is the one I like the most. For Missouri Compromise. So folks, we have a balance of power in our Congress and we need to maintain it, or at least congressmen want to maintain it. If we have too many free states, the slave states are paranoid that they're going to get outvoted and maybe slavery will be abolished. The Northerners are paranoid that if we get too many slave states and they outnumber the northern free states, that slavery is going to take over the entire rest of the nation. Both sides are paranoid that the other side is going to stamp out their way of life. And we've maintained a balance of power until 1820. We've maintained an equal number of northern states and an equal number of southern states. But by 1820, folks, we've got a problem because we're about to upset the balance of power. Missouri is ready to be admitted. They've got their 60,000 settlers. They've developed a constitution, and it allows slavery. When Missouri applies for admission to the Union, the Northerners kind of start tripping out a little bit because this will give the Southerners the majority of power in Congress. So a compromise must be reached, folks, because the Northerners are not going to admit Missouri. They refuse to do it. They understand what will happen if they do. They will be essentially not in control anymore, and they refuse to admit Missouri unless a compromise has come and another free state is added. Guys, this is where we're going to add Maine. So this is the compromise. We add another slave state, Missouri, and we pair it with a free state, Maine. Everyone's seemingly happy. We maintain the balance of power. But we also have another component of it, folks, that you've got to remember, and it's that 3630 parallel. We draw that line across the country and say slavery will not be allowed above that line, and that line is basically right here. You've got to know what the Missouri Compromise is. It represents kind of the beginning of the sectional crisis. You got to understand the trade-off, Missouri for Maine. And please understand that line, 3630, because it's going to be very important when we start talking about the Mexican-American War and taking this land from Mexico later on down the road. 3630 parallel, one slave state, one free state, so we maintain the balance of power. That's what that Missouri Compromise is all about. Guys, you'll never see a DBQ just on the Missouri Compromise. You have to stitch the Missouri Compromise into a bigger essay on slavery itself. Cool. I'm going to save Second Great Awakening for tomorrow because I want to kind of limit it to a half hour right now. We're coming up on 25 minutes. So I think we did a fair amount today, guys, or at least it feels like I did. These are really important topics. And so I think we'll just recap them and then call it a day. Republican motherhood. Ladies, this is your reward for participating in the American Revolution. It is not equality, but it's a step in the right direction. It will result in many ladies getting education for the first time, and it puts a new significance on the role of women in the home. Ladies, you still got to stay in the home, but we think you're really important. Your job, raising your children, the next generation of civic leaders that know about American values, and you need your basic education to do that. Trust me, guys, it sounds weird, but it's a step forward, and you need to weave that into an essay on a topic about the changing role of women. Market revolution, pretty easy. New technology allows us to produce more stuff, whether it's food or products. That's great, but only if we have more customers. Infrastructure, canals, roads, trains, that allows us to open up new markets to sell this stuff. It leads to economic prosperity. It leads to a concentration of business in the North, and it also leads to a concentration of infrastructure in the North. Guys, remember, when the Civil War breaks out in the 1860s, the South has very few railroads compared to the North. They have very few canals compared to the North. And most of our nation's manufacturing is in the North. So be aware that's a legacy of the market revolution as well. Regional specialization. Southerners are going to marry themselves to cotton production. And ultimately, it's probably a major reason why they, are not going to win the Civil War. Is they're a monoculture, essentially, in terms of their agriculture. Not the full definition, but you get what I'm saying. Industry, manufacturing concentrated in the North, and agriculture in the South. That's a consequence of the market revolution. We talked about the spread of slavery from Eli Whitney's cotton gin to the profitability of cotton spreading into the Deep South due to demand from northern textile mills, ultimately leading us to the start of the sectional crisis with the Missouri Revolution. I called it the Missouri Revolution. I meant Missouri Compromise. Yeah, I fudged a few words. I kind of stumbled over a few, but it's my first lecture in 10 days, so cut me some slack. I think that's all I want to do. The causes and consequences of the Missouri Compromise. As we spread west, will it be slave or free? That's how I always think about it. What are the causes of this compromise? Westward expansion, folks. If we don't spread west, we don't have this problem. But we do spread west, so we've got to determine if slavery's going with us out there.
I have a question.
Yeah, shoot.
I know that at least around this time or later on, the whole Native American reservation thing and the Trail of Tears stuff happens, but what about right now? Because I know that because before colonists had an issue with Native Americans getting into arguments and fights and stuff, but what about right now? Where do they stand?
So essentially, Dre, let's do it by region. In New England, the Native American resistance by 1800 is basically done. Believe it or not, the Native American resistance in New England is done even really before the American Revolution. That's like Metacom's War. That's like King Philip stuff. That's like the 1690s, 1700s. So New England, the resistance is basically done. Now moving south into Virginia and the Chesapeake, we've already basically pushed the natives out of there. And they're west of the Appalachians. So really, you're going to see tribes, and you don't have to remember the tribes by name, but it's the Creek, it's the Cherokee, it's the Chickasaw, it's the Seminole down in Florida. Those are the regions where we haven't really moved into yet. So you say, what's the state of Native American relations? It depends. It's bad wherever we're coming into contact with. If we haven't yet migrated in there, the natives are still relatively, and the tribes are still intact. They've been trading with Americans now for 100+ years. So I don't mean to say that they're uncontacted tribes. It's nothing like that. But just be aware that until Americans, basically ranchers, miners, and families start moving into Indian lands, it's not the end of the world. I'm sure Indians didn't love the situation, but it's not genocide. It's not really murder. It's not stealing of land until average Americans want it, whether it's minerals, gold, whether it's just good farmland, what have you. That's when it starts getting bad. Got bad in the Northeast in the 1690s. It was bad in Virginia in the 1600s. Now that we're moving south into the Deep South, That's where the Cherokee live. The Cherokee are a southern tribe. Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama. Now that we're moving down into there, that's where you're going to see the same tension that happened in New England. It's going to happen in the southern states. And then it'll happen again in the Dakotas with Sitting Bull and the Lakota in the 1880s. It's just moving in a pattern. Hopefully you see that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Cool. Great question. Hopefully I answered it. What else you guys got? Any other questions before I stop recording? No? No? Okay. Well, I'll stop recording. And let's see, tomorrow I want to do early. Anyone have what time? Shoot me a time. I mean, I want to do it as early as possible, but does Layman or Mr. Dick or anyone have any objections to like the 9 o'clock time?
I think
Mr. Franz.
So Layman and Franz have something at 9?
No, Franz has something at 11.
Okay.
Right?
Well, I guess some of your teachers have something all throughout the day, but I just
Yeah, I have Layman at 9 and Franz at 11 too. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You can do like can you do like this time again or 11 maybe?
Yeah. Grace said 10, so I heard no 9 and no 11, but I heard a 10.
10 works, yeah.
Okay. I'm sure it won't work for everybody, but I heard a few people say 10 will work for them, so that's what I'll go ahead and do. I'm sure it won't work for everyone, but a couple of you are saying that's okay. So, yeah, Xavier says 10. I'm sorry, Olivia. Olivia, you have Layman at 10. I will, Olivia, you're so good at coming. I will conform to whatever you want for Wednesday and Thursday, Olivia. Basically, everyone in here, it's like the same 20 people, you know, Dre and Annabelle and Grace, Xavier, all of you, Haley, you know, Heather. I mean, I don't want to miss anyone, but all of you guys that are in here, if you look at this list, it's like the same 20 people every time. So I just really appreciate you guys. If you ever do have a specific time to do it, I want to work with you. Every whatever time I pick, because I'm only doing one a day. Whatever time I pick is gonna not work for someone, but this is really the 20 people I care the most about. I care about all my kids, but I'm not gonna lie, I care about those of you who show up more. So anyhow, let me know. But 10 o'clock is what we'll do tomorrow. Okay, gang.
Hey.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alrighty then.
Cool. And then I'll flip it up and we'll do whatever Olivia wants on the next day. Cool. All right.
Can you see
I'm gonna
my?
stop. Hold on one second. I'm going to stop recording. I'm still screen